The Pathfinder workers of Swindon may be flexible, cooperative, highly skilled and willing to tackle anything, but they can never be certain what lies ahead.
Well, all our men are fully trained men. We can tackle any job that's asked us. This goes not only for the machine shop, for Swindon as a whole.
We don't accept that anybody has a right to close Swindon Works.
Well, I can't see any future at all. They've just lost all that amount, and half of the factory has been closed down. The original factory stood on about 360, 370 acres. It's down to half that now.
The need to preserve something which goes back in the years has had the full cooperation of the workforce. Those skills locked up in this place, benefiting the community and the rail system as a whole. It's most unlikely that some of those skills will be used now in the engineering field outside. Swindon is changing. I think we have to ask ourselves the question, how far do we want to let our manufacturing base drop in the town?
I think it's generally understood now by the whole of the Swindon workforce that the question of flexibility and the interchange of trades and past practices that have stood as in good stead for over 100 years have to be changed, and they've done it with a willingness that is only just now been approached by other engineering concerns and BREL in particular.
The railway was the great mother. It was in effect the feudal landlord, as it were, providing everything for the men who worked. Provided schools, churches, amusements, and so on. This was all, the great social community aspect is one of the most important ones which you learn about when you're discussing the railway works in Swindon. So the whole community therefore is saddened by this kind of news.
Swindon Works remains a huge industrial operation by any standards. In size, it's still one of the biggest engineering factories in the country. And considering there's been talk of cuts and closures for decades, the fact that it's still open is a feat in itself.
The working men over in the railway works had done all that was asked of them.
This is the wheel shop. Here, many of the skills, even some of the machines, date back to the last century. And that's just as well, because they still do some work on steam locomotive wheels for railway preservation societies. The professionals are men like Bob Blake and Dave Allett, seen here at the furnace in the factory's non-ferrous foundry. Today they're working with molten aluminium to cast seat leg brackets used in BR trains. They make about 8,000 of these here every year. The future of men like these depends upon the future of the railway industry, and that depends on the whole future of transport.
When I started work in the railway works, 1920, there was 14,500 men worked in that works. When I left, it was down to 2,500.
The new technological revolution towers over the old town, which is engulfed by the silicon chip boom. Hundreds of new companies have moved in.
1 mile of motorway takes 40 acres of land. 1 mile of railway track takes 1 acre. You don't get the air pollution. The trains you do with thousands of motor cars and heavy lorries.
Right.
They're just realising now that even the forests are dying.